There we go.
Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown and our 2015 NBA Draft Show. I'm very excited to welcome on the show Mark Deeks, Seth Partnow, Kelly Scaletta, and Jeff Feyerer, and along with me, Coach Nick, we're going to break down the draft, what happened, what went wrong, what went right, and everything in between, plus your questions that you ask using hashtag #BBallShow. So, let's jump in here, fellas. We have the number one pick was not a surprise with Karl Anthony Towns. So, Mark, I'll throw it to you to begin with. Was this a shocker? Is this going to work for them or what?
Thank you for coming to me first, because if you look at this, Nick, I don't know if you can see that, but it's 5 minutes to 4 in the morning, and I'll go be at work at 8, so thank you for coming to me first so I can go to bed quicker. It's not a shock at all. He's the best player in the draft, and there's a significant enough gap between him and second and third, Russell and Okafor, that it was never in doubt. He's the best all-around player on both ends of the court. Once you Okafor's better offensively, but Towns is much better defensively. It's not a shocker. It's the right pick. He's the closest thing to a surefire star, and we had to give Minnesota obviously 5 minutes a day to make their decision. They made it ages ago. They made it from the day they won the lottery, and it was never in doubt. Nor should it have been.
Beautiful. Well, does anyone want to disagree with him?
No, not at all.
Nope.
That one sounds
All right, 20 to go. Yeah, in 5 minutes.
Yeah, all right. I mean, listen, I don't think anyone was shocked. Minnesota could certainly use him. Does that mean they're going to move anybody? Does Pekovic go, or what happens here?
The problem is Pekovic is tough to move with it. He's early in a new decent-sized contract, and he's got ankle issues that have been reported as all kinds of different things. So, would you be willing to pay enough to someone to take him? And probably not. So, I mean, he might just be some dead money that they're sitting on for the next couple of years. Or if he gets better, then he's gonna he'll play some. But it seems like that's kind of a sunk cost for them.
Kelly, if you say one more word, we're gonna have to kick you out of here.
Yeah, I was just sorry. I was thinking if he establishes he can play, he just had surgery on his Achilles, right? So if he can come back and play and show that he's healthy, I wouldn't be surprised to see him move around the trade deadline. But he'd have to show that he can still play and stay healthy. And then even then, it might be one of those trades where you have to throw in a draft pick with him to get somebody to take the contract on. But I don't see anybody trading for a $40 million contract that's got health risks.
Absolutely. Well, so how are we going to see that playing time get strung out here with all these guys? Do we see Towns starting?
Yeah. I mean, right now they're posting their depth chart with Garnett and Pekovic. I don't think there's any way that happens. And Towns is going to start, and he's the number one pick, and I think he's got to start from day one.
All right, and it's possible that one of you guys might have to turn your speakers down a little bit. We're having a little bit of echo, or it's the TV in the background. So if you can do that, that'd be great. Well, I think we kind of covered what everyone knew about Towns, so certainly that doesn't seem to be a real shocker. They put in, we'll probably have less questions about that. Let's move on to the second pick then, because the Lakers picked, and they kind of shocked some people. So who here saw this coming?
I didn't see it coming. I would have picked Okafor second. I said as much because I think he's the second best player. I think it must have affected the fact that the Lakers figured they will score well in free agency over the coming month, and that they can only really score with bigs because there aren't any point guards out there this year. There's Dragic, but he's probably going back. There's Beverly, but he's restricted. There's not much beyond that unless you fancy Rondo, which at this point is tough to do. And it will have factored into that. And it's kind of absurd to choose who you pick with the draft as high as second based on free agency decisions that are still in the future. There's no guarantee, no matter what they may know, that players are going to sign with the Lakers. It's absurd that they might choose they might make a decision on the basis of that. At the same time, it was clearly suitably close enough that they felt they could be influenced by that. And I guess that's not necessarily wrong, because Russell, and this contradicts what I said about 3 hours ago, but that's fine, I'm that kind of guy. Russell is incredibly good offensively, be that scoring or creating. And if he does have these defensive concerns, of course he does. He's played 1 year of college ball. Of course he has defensive concerns. He's a guard. He's 19 or 20, whichever he is. Yes, certainly he does. They can sort that out. He has plenty of potential in the NBA to star here. He has all the offensive ability, the instincts, and the skills. And it's not, I didn't see it coming. I didn't agree with it at the time. But in the hours and hours and hours we've had now since the start of the draft, I've come to accept it's a plenty defensible position.
Seth, you want to argue?
No, and I think it's not just about Russell. I don't think. I think people have had kind of concerns about Okafor, obviously very dominant college player, but you look at how the NBA is moving, and especially defensively, I don't think you're wrong to have concerns about his ability to be a two-way force inside. I mean, he could turn out to be an absolutely dominant center and bring the post-up game back single-handedly, but at the same time, you just kind of watched a finals where kind of traditional big guys got played off the floor a little bit. So you can see why. All right, well, it's close. Let's take the guy who's more on trend, and it's certainly defensible to me.
Kelly, do you feel like this is a precursor towards them getting Boogie Cousins? Uh-oh. Kelly went mute. Okay, well, I threw it to Kelly, but anyone else want to grab that while we figure out why Kelly got muted? I don't understand, but...
I can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, I hope they don't go for Cousins. I was looking at this today. The two players that scored 20 points, two most inefficient players last year were Kobe Bryant and DeMarcus Cousins. So I don't see how you put two high-volume, 35% usage players that are shooting around, 45%, and think that that's going to produce a winner. So I don't know. I think I like Russell. I like the idea of just taking a long-term approach and rebuilding the team rather than trying to win now, because they're not going to win now. Cousins has never won in Sacramento. I think he's a guy that puts up big numbers, but I don't think he's the guy you can build a championship around. I hope what they're doing is applying a long-term approach to rebuilding. That's the only way that's going to work.
If you've taken on Russell, there's no reason why you would be building a championship around Cousins. You could be building it around Russell. I believe you target Cousins regardless of the fact that you've got the incredibly inefficient old version of Kobe Bryant. Because Cousins is really good. If he is inefficient and he turns it over a lot, that's fine. Look at the situation he's in, and he's still young and he's still improving. And he can be seen to be improving, particularly on defense. He has improved over the years. You definitely target Cousins, regardless of who you pick, because of how good he is. He's better than either player you could have picked, perhaps. I don't think it matters, though, because I don't think this is a decision they've made on the back of being able to get Cousins, because I don't think they're going to get Cousins. The Kings are certainly talking for at least 45 minutes now, which is quite consistent for them, that Cousins is unavailable, as well he should be. Is it a precursor for Love? Maybe. Does Love pair with Randall? Doesn't really matter at this point. They need the talent. They can work that out later. I wouldn't worry about how it fits in with Cousins, because Russell, he'd be the one that the future is around. Kobe at this point doesn't matter. He'll put together 1 or 2 good years. If they're inefficient, it doesn't matter, because they're not building anything with him. They're tolerating him whilst building something else, trying to gain a new talent level. If he fits in the interim, brilliant. If he doesn't, it doesn't matter, because the foundation is now Randall and Russell and whoever else they can bag in free agency.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the third pick. I think we covered the Lakers quite a bit, and we'll see how that shakes out. But I do think that something's going to happen out there. With Philly, Jahlil Okafor, I guess, kind of lands in their lap, and it seemed like that wasn't going to happen 3 or 4 days ago. What does this mean as they continually draft sort of these big men out of college? Is this another one? Is this maybe perhaps Embiid insurance?
I don't think they're thinking about really that at all. They're until they kind of flip the switch and start. All right, we're going to start, for lack of a better term, trying now. They're just accumulating the assets, the best players, the guys who, when it's time to, all right, here's what we have. Let's rearrange it, trade it around. Maybe next year when Dario Saric comes over, then we start to worry about how this all fits together. But until then, Okafor, I'm sure was the top selection left on their board, and probably by a decent margin, considering how highly he was kind of overall. So that's fairly straightforward, just best player available, and we'll worry about fit later.
Sounds very reasonable to me. Anybody else want to grab that?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of talking today with I like the fit just from a pure style of play standpoint. Next to Nerlens Noel, obviously there's going to be concern about Embiid until he proves he's healthy. But as far as the style of play standpoint, from the defensive standpoint, Noel can cover up a lot of Okafor's. He's still growing. But I mean, when you have a scorer like Okafor in the post, who's totally unlike anything we've seen for quite some time, at least in my point of view, you have to take him. There's going to be some current concern about spacing because Okafor has just recently shown they can hit a 15, 16-foot jump shot, but not consistently. So I think that that's going to be a concern. But an offensive talent like that, Philly doesn't have anything like that right now, and it's going to who knows what they're doing in the long term. But just from a strict talent standpoint and fit standpoint, I like it for Philly.
Absolutely, I think that it's a no-brainer at that point if you have Jahlil Okafor and he goes as far as the third pick, and probably a foundational piece, right? I mean, there's no reason to believe that they couldn't continue that. What's the most recent news on Embiid? Is his foot simply broken and a serious problem, or is it just a minor thing?
It sounds bad. It sounds very bad. I don't know what that changes. They had to pick Embiid then. They had to pick Okafor now. In both instances, they've had a generational talent centre fall to them at the third pick. You have to take them. Play Okafor at small forward if you have to. I don't know what you're going to do, but don't worry about that for now. Just get him.
Absolutely, Seth, and I think you're on that same page.
Yeah. Who knows? They've been very kind of tight-lipped about exactly what's going on, which kind of is, I think, leading to some of the concern, and also with, I think there's a little bit of almost fatalism going on, just because I think some people wanted to kind of dance on their graves a little bit when the process fails. So I think people are maybe, I don't want to say hoping for the worst, but ready to have some schadenfreude if it does go really badly for him.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me. Well, let's jump out to some questions, shall we? Because we have a lot of them, people using the hashtag BBallShow. So I thought, we can ignore Nate's beautiful mug here and go right to Walk, please. G. Kuden asks, do you think Bron should have won MVP? What are your thoughts on the fact that you have to win? Do we want to take 30 seconds to answer a non-draft question? Do we think that LeBron should have won even though his team lost?
I don't need 30 seconds. Yes.
He would have gotten my vote had I had one, definitely. I'm fine with Iguodala winning it, but yeah, I mean, he was by such a large margin the most influential player on the series. But certainly.
Okay. I disagree. I feel like, the precedence would have to be, I don't know, I just feel like it needed to be 7 games before you start to consider that. And certainly if that got there, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But he kind of had a clunker, in the game 5 and 6 a little bit. It wasn't as dominating. So I kind of get why he probably didn't win it.
I mean, if you have, by the sounds of it, Nick, you're saying that to be the MVP of the finals in a loss, you have to be entirely perfect. I don't know if that should be the threshold, because LeBron was not only brilliant, despite you can pick holes and you have, he was still brilliant, and he was much more brilliant than everybody else. And I think that is a much more realistic threshold, and I definitely met it.
All right, Kelly, Jeff, anybody?
I think it's pretty simple. He had more value to Cleveland than anybody on Golden State had to Golden State. So he's the most valuable player because he was the player that had the most value.
Okay, Jeff, what about you think? What do you think?
No, I'm with Kelly too, and I think we talked about it before that what is the series without him? I mean, it's a 4-game sweep. I mean, granted, take it the best player off any team, it's gonna be a 4-game sweep, but there really is no historical comparison to what he did. So to say, I mean, that was just the best individual performance I've ever seen, regardless of outcome by a certain team.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's move on to our next question then, see if we can get one on the draft here. Nikhil asks, have the Warriors at the foundation of a new dynasty? You think they can three-peat? They do have a lot of young players. Anyone who wants to grab that one?
They're certainly set up to be, very good for the near future. This is going to sound like I'm cutting them down, but it's not. They had good fortune this year. Some of their opponents got hurt and they didn't. And every champion has, it's not. That's kind of you need to be both very good and lucky. And next year they might just be very good and unlucky, and so they'll compete for a title, and that's kind of all you can really hope for is to be there with a chance. And then from there, Bogut's getting a little older, and while he's not as integral to their team maybe in the finals as he has been at times, you do still like having kind of that big size and rim protection at times. So, but yeah, there's no reason to think that they can't be a top contender for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
I agree. I mean, they're good. They're brilliant. They're better than good. It's hard to be dynastic though, and especially so when you don't have one of those transcendent talents. They have tremendous talents. They have Seth, actually you, Steph Curry. I keep doing that. I keep calling him Seth. That's little brother, isn't it? Steph Curry, who's transcendent in his style of play, but you can't say he's amongst the greatest of all time, the most unique and brilliant, certainly, but not to that level where he can be the foundation of a dynasty. The talents elsewhere, of course, in Thompson, Barnes and Green, Bogut, elsewhere, there's plenty of them. How that works down the line when the disease of more kicks in and whatnot, we'll find out. They should be in and around for a long time, and they could certainly win another one. They've got the coach and they've got the players. How much of that sustains, we'll find out.
Well, let's go to a quick question. I found the right questions here, which are dealing with the draft from today. And Sirocco asks, how does Winslow fit with Miami? Now, we can kind of jump to that one. I'm just kind of curious because certainly I think everyone is very excited in Miami to get him in there. What are our thoughts on Winslow at that pick?
I love it.
Oh,
to me, that's like the steal of the draft. When you went, like, in terms of just, first of all, they had to be delighted he fell down that far. He's a top 5 pick in there, so that he fell that far is outstanding. Wade, if Wade sticks around or if he doesn't stick around, either way, he's got 2 guys in Dang and possibly Wade that can mentor him, that are perfect for him. I just think it's like a perfect transition into the future for Miami. I don't think it could have gone any better for them.
Yeah, I'm with Kelly. I love the fit. We had him. I think we had him ranked 5 or 6 in our big board. Someone had compared. I think it was Mort on Twitter compared it to the Paul Pierce situation back in '98, and I think Mark mentioned the Caron Butler situation when they were coming out, where you have a talent that's clearly one of the possibly 5 or 6 guys in the draft, and for whatever reason, people became, or they overanalyzation or whatever through workouts, they became disenchanted with him. Well, you watched the tournament last year. He was the best player in the tournament. He was the most versatile player in the tournament, and he filled in the spots where Duke needed him. And I think that's a great spot to bring to Miami because you don't know what's going to come with Dragic and with Wade coming back, so he can fill in whatever holes they need without having to rush. So I think it's a great fit.
I don't know exactly if he's ready right away to completely, compete with 25 minutes a game and do really well there. But certainly, I'm impressed with his athletic ability, his body. I think one of you guys, I think, even tweeted that Dang finally gets to have a little bit of a rest, right? That certainly could be that could be something that worthwhile for him because he kind of reminds me. Well, that doesn't remind me of Dang. Who does he remind you of most of the NBA right now?
Someone in our draft match chat, I can't
Jimmy
remember.
Butler.
Said Ruben Patterson, but the good Ruben Patterson, which is comparison I can work with. Going back to what Jeff said about Caron Butler, it's mostly circumstantial, of course, but Caron Butler, 13 years ago, he went to Miami with the 10th pick, just like Winslow has just done, in what, in hindsight, was a pretty terrible draft. I mean, it was Yao and Butler and Paul Millsap, basically. But circumstantial as it is, there's a logical comparison there whereby one of the better talents, or certainly more ready talents, despite his youth, has fallen to Miami, who had to take that opportunity. It works out quite well with Caron after a bad rookie year. They didn't keep him for very long, but look what they got for him. They got Shaquille O'Neal. So the comparison's there, not in terms of style of play, but in terms of the value of the asset and the situation. It certainly is.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to our next pick, number 4. The New York Knicks took Kristaps Porzingis. And what's funny about this is that he can really stretch the floor at a very tall height. And the one thing that struck me was I thought, if they push the ball to the wing and then he fills a traditional top of the key role where they swing it, most offenses have some sort of delayed, fast break like that. He could shoot that ball, and I don't think there would be a lot of defenders that would defend him out there. The problem is that in the triangle offense, it doesn't really work normally that way, where you'd have him trailing up to the top of the key and then they'd swing it up to him there. So I don't know. Is this a project, or is he going to help right away?
It's absolutely a project. He's, on both sides of the ball, you think. I mean, he's 7'2", 220 or something like that. I mean, he's super thin, and just his ability to, physically match up against NBA big men is, it's not going to be there right away. It doesn't mean it's a bad pick. You shouldn't really be worrying about if he's ready right now. They won, was it 17 games last year? And you don't go from there to, most of the time you don't go from there to, unless you sign LeBron, you don't go from there to a title contending level anyway. So if it takes 2 years and he develops into that kind of the very rare kind of rim protecting defensive 3-point shooting stretch 5 type player, then that's awesome if that's what he is in 2.5 years.
Jeff, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I am not sure. With the Knicks, they have so much that they need that I think the point was made that they have to kind of swing for the fences one of these times. Now, do I think that this was the right guy to do that with? No. I think there was a number of guys that were available right there that I think would have helped them more, both in the short term and the long term. I think Priscilla commented that it's going to be 3 to 4 years before he's ready to contribute regularly, which, that's not really the thing you want to hear, even for a project at the number 4 pick in the draft. So, coming back up, and I'm sure we'll get to Jerry and Grant later, but they got something out of this draft. But Porzingis, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a total revamp, and it's going to depend on who they get in free agency this year. And there's so many unanswered questions that it's hard to really tell until they get into the offseason a little further.
Absolutely. Well, I think, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out, but certainly New York has their work cut out for them for a couple of years at least. And it looked like Phil Jackson himself in the interview that I saw, definitely felt like this was a project and it was going to take a while. So, unless we see some trades and something happening, that should probably be the normal trajectory of the Knicks. Probably too late for Melo to be involved then, right? 2 years from now, Melo is going to be, too old, right?
Yeah, he's the trial. That's the project. That's the thing that's not working. And if they're going to continue to insist upon imposing that, especially now they're starting to assemble a core of players who don't necessarily fit it, there's your problem. It's not Porzingis' projection or progression, It's the fact that if they're not optimizing that which they have because of their insistence on using the system, then they're not doing this right.
One thing I do think they're doing right, and I think we'll maybe get to it later, is with them trading, Tim Hardaway Jr. is, they are kind of avoiding kind of chasing short-term success for a team that isn't close to having short-term success. So, they've, for 15 years they've been kind of just throwing assets after trying to compete now. And it's going to take them, a season or two just to unwind all the damage they've done. And so, Again, the fact that they're not doing things that are necessarily geared towards right now is fine, especially if they're okay, fine. Carmelo's contract expires. They got out from under J.R. Smith's contract. I know we disagreed on that previously and stuff like that, but just it's a patient direction, which is just a very much of a departure kind of from the previous regime, which is, if you're a Knicks fan, it's probably painful, but it's also necessary.
I agree with the pick. I mean, no pain, no gain. He has the potential, Porzingis, and they will have to wait that out, and they should do. And patience is clearly not a virtue that's all that abundant amongst New York fans and faithful. It need be, it should be. Impatience hasn't worked. Try patience.
Well, let's move on to our number 5 pick then, with Orlando choosing Mario Hezonia out of Croatia. And this guy is extremely different from their last several picks because he can actually shoot the ball from the outside. And I think that perhaps the Magic have either they're going to abandon or they're going to hope that the guys they did pick will eventually develop a jump shot. But this looks like a really good pick for them and the guy that can fill it up. Although, do they already have a lot of players at this position?
I mean, I think this is the position that they were struggling to find or they didn't have right now, because I think if they re-up Tobias Harris, he's going to be a little bit of a 4 sometimes when they go small, but mostly a 3. And then they have obviously Vucevic at the 5, and then they've got Oladipo and Payton in the backcourt. And I mean, and the swing positions, that this is a guy that has a chance to be a star, has a chance to fit in well with those other 4 guys because he's the only one that can really fill it up from the outside, can get to the bucket. Oladipo can obviously go to the hole, but they're never going to be talented shooters. I mean, we've seen I don't know if we've seen enough of a sample size yet, but we know that Peyton's not going to shoot the ball. Oladipo's got a little better, but 33% really isn't going to cut it when you're looking for a knockdown 2. So I think Hezonia and being more NBA ready than Porzingis, I think it's a good fit there. Gordon's going to play a little 3, but last year he played mostly 4. So it's going to be interesting to see how Skiles works that rotation, and to see how much of a chance he gives a player like this, but as a young kid. But I think he's got a chance to really be that missing piece there. That was the one player I wanted to see them take.
Don't all speak at once. I think he definitely seems like a guy who might be more NBA ready than a lot of the other guys. Does that sound accurate to anybody?
He's experienced at a high level of basketball. So he's NBA ready in that respect. I worry that it's a bit high, but I don't really want to say anything because I'd rather wax lyrical about the next guy who I think they perhaps could have picked instead. Hezonia, good though he is, young though he is still, young and experienced I guess, but a bit too one-dimensional to be picking 5th. It was difficult because the clear-cut 5th best talent was Mudiay, who was extremely redundant amongst Payton and Oladipo, as Jeff just talks about. So I think it's a little bit of a reach with Hezonia. I think it's a justifiable reach with Hezonia, but a reach nonetheless.
Fair enough. Well, what do you say? Should we move on to our next pick then, which is Sacramento gets the player that I actually said on Twitter about a month ago. I think that Willie Cauley-Stein could ultimately be, the most valuable or one of the most valuable players out of this draft, simply because of the way he can move at that height. And I did see some of the draft workout stuff. It didn't look like his offensive game was as archaic as everyone wants to make it out to be, especially because he's playing at Kentucky, where I'm sure Calipari did not let him do anything at all besides rim run and get dunks. So, does anyone think I'm crazy on this one?
No, I completely agree with you. I'm a huge fan of Willie Cauley-Stein. People talk about him, I think, like he's Dan Gadzuric or Ryan Hollins or something. It's bizarre because he doesn't create much offensively, because he doesn't post up, which is kind of an archaic demand in itself. He doesn't really shoot jumpers. He hit about 10 or something last year, whatever it was. So what? He's almost perfect defensively. If his leg, which injuries he's got, if they hold up, he could be a spectacular defensive player, good rebounder, defends guards, switches, the paint, the basket itself, the rim, everywhere. And offensively, I've seen him do things ranging from hitting jump shots to running the court, driving down the lane with his left hand and finishing. He doesn't do much consistently. He doesn't do much creating at all. But he doesn't just catch and dunk out there. He does crash the glass. He puts them back. He finishes easy ones. He runs the court. If he can develop a more consistent pick and roll game, he only has to get about 10 to 12 a game. Why wouldn't he? In the NBA we've got today, where Robin Lopez is doing these things, I think he's fantastic, and I just hope that his leg holds out.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think that, and this is something that we saw, I think, a couple times in kind of initial commentary on the draft is, oh well, he's not going to be an offensive creator. So what? He's going to be. I mean, if he lives up to this potential we're talking about, he's going to be a great defensive player, and that's it's trite to say, but that's half the game. And if he can do that and do things on offense like sit in the dunker spot on the baseline and catch dump offs off drives and offensive rebound and stuff like that, and be mobile enough to set screens on around the perimeter, then he's contributing to the offense. He's not going to be a guy you want with the ball in his hands necessarily, but that's okay. You've got five guys. One guy can be kind of a worker bee on offense, and then really be a spectacular talent on defense, and just his mobility at that size is if he learns NBA defense, is potentially just spectacular. I mean, almost I don't want to go too crazy here, but almost a more athletic Tyson Chandler. He's not going to. So far, he's not the rebounder Tyson Chandler is, but still, that level of defense, it's going a little crazy, but that's in play.
Yeah, I think. I'm sorry.
So what me and Seth have just said about him offensively, it'll be difficult for him initially being in Sacramento, where things are up in the air, especially at the guard position. Seth, you talk about him being in position for dump-offs and finishing. Yes, not so much in Sacramento. Don't worry about that, though, because that will sort itself out. They know they need to address their backcourt. They've just put the front court together for God knows how long. The backcourt will come. And when it does, Cauley Stein's offense will come with it.
Absolutely. I would think Tyson Chandler is circa the Hornets with Chris Paul, where he was just getting a lot of those alley-oops off of the pick and roll and destroying teams, and there's no reason to believe he couldn't do that. And who knows? I feel like he can pick and pop. The mechanics look fine on his jump shot. It doesn't look frightening to me. So I don't know. I just that guy, when I see a guy who's at that height who can do that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he's legit 7 feet, right?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, I think Mark and I were going back and forth. I think we said DeAndre Jordan's a good comp too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that play at the end of the Notre Dame game in the tournament is the play that haunts offensive players. I mean, it haunts them at night. It was amazing. He ran Jerry and Grant down the entire length of the court, and it's amazing that this. I mean, I think it was last year he averaged about 4 blocks per 40 minutes. This year he took a big step back, but it was because they needed Towns as the rim protector, and they were confident enough in Cauley Stein to have him go defend on the perimeter. There's really no comp for that there's ever been in college basketball. So it's unique, and I think, Coach, you're right on. I think he's going to be a special player.
Well, let's turn it over to some more questions, shall we? Because we certainly have some in our queue here. So let's break it out with our next question that and Trin asks. And this will jump us out of order again, but that's fine. How will FSK Part 3 fit in with his new team? And if you don't know who that is the Happy Badger, Frank Kaminsky. I might just maybe show his profile here. But how is he going to fit in, having been drafted in the first round by Charlotte by number 9? What are we thinking here? Is this a good pick for them? We have a lot of people shaking their heads, but I don't hear anything.
This strikes me as kind of maybe fixating on a player, and then he's available. Oh, let's take him. I think we'll get there, but we did talk about it a little bit. I mean, you'd rather have Justice Winslow, I think, than Kaminsky. You see the appeal, especially for a team that lacked shooting completely. But my question is, will he do all the other stuff he needs to do to, be a serviceable player on the court? for that shooting to matter. Is he going to be able to defend the pick and roll? Is he going to be able to protect the rim? Is he going to be able to rebound at an NBA level? And it's less certain of that, I'd say. His lateral movement and kind of lack of bulk as much as of anything inside are real concerns there. And if you're just getting Steve Novak, that's not a good return on the 9th pick.
I mean, there's reaches, there are acceptable reaches, and then there are unacceptable reaches. And I think Kaminsky was probably a 19 pick caliber, not 9. The ironic thing is that he's always been lauded for his very high skill level for a 7-footer, and yet it's not that translatable. The question, as Seth points out, is will he have enough skill at the NBA level apart from his shooting? He's been a good shooter in the past, but he's not been a high volume shooter. He's going to have to become a high volume shooter and prove himself to be up and around high 30s, 40% on high volume, unless he can, or in addition to somehow proving that he can defend at this level, that he can rebound. His post game is going to be mitigated significantly from the day he steps on the court. So it's going to become about that jump shot. And there's no reason to know right now that he's going to be a brilliant high volume shooter. And Charlotte, in particular, is an odd place for him to go because they do need shooting. Of course they do. They lacked it so bitterly last year. And then 2 trades they've made thus far this summer have sought to address that. Yet they also just took on Spencer Hawes. And I'm not saying you adjust your draft strategy because you take on Spencer Hawes. He's a backup. But then is Kaminsky a starter at any point? If he's not, you just took him 9th.
Kelly, you want to answer that? You want to take that?
Yeah, that was my same take on it. Is why did you just trade for Spencer Hawes and then do this? It just seems redundant to me. If you want a stretch 4 that can't defend, just stick with Hawes. Why get 2 of them?
Yeah. That is a great point, and it is confusing to me as well. I think he could be better than John Lure, who also at Wisconsin in a similar sort of height positional. He can come in and give them some good minutes and be smart and hustle and knock down a shot. So I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do that at the very least. But again, I guess the question is how is he on the court with the roster they have right now?
But this is the 9th pick we're talking about, with Justice Winslow and others on the board. Being better than John Lure is not the aim here. John Lure is fine at the back end of your rotation. You're looking at a 9th pick. You can't have an upside that's so limited whereby you can make, in all seriousness, a comparison so well how will he compare to John Lure. Especially with Winslow there, who, whether or not you think he's going to achieve it, has upside. And it's not just Winslow. I say him because he was immediately the next pick, and I think he had the more potential of anyone that came after. But not just him, others as well as him. And yet they've taken Kaminsky. What's the upside? That he is a high-volume 40% shooter? Fine. So what does that make him? Channing Frye?
Very good point. Very good point.
And Channing Frye, his last little spell in Phoenix is. I think if Kaminsky turns into that, you're wildly delighted, and you're still that's all we got out of the 9th pick.
Exactly.
So and I think, like I said at the start, I think it was almost like this is our guy. We hope he's there at 9 for us, especially with all the smoke coming out of New York maybe taking him 4, which Knicks fans were just terrified of. And then he's there. Fire away, let's take him, and not quite enough. Slow down. Let's take a long, hard look at Winslow, who we didn't maybe think was going to be there, because he's all around just a far superior prospect, I would think, in terms of.
Certainly, and those aren't the only 2 options, because it was said that Charlotte were considering trade options at 9. Are we to believe that there were no better offers from people in the late lottery or the low teens who wanted to get up and get perhaps Winslow or something? There was no better offer there than taking Frank Kaminsky. I don't think I can believe that.
Jeff, you're our college guy. Does Kaminsky deserve all this non-love?
He's a nice player, and I wouldn't go so far as to say that he is going to be, I don't want to say down to John Lure's player level because he is a good player. He's a decent back of the rotation guy. But a lot of my concerns about his physicality were alleviated this year. You know, I tried to find comparable players and their styles and try and see how they fit. Well, you look at Kelly Olynyk, you look at Cody Zeller, you look at a little bit. I mean, you even look at Tyler Hansbrough a little bit, but he can step outside more than those guys can. I thought he was more physical than each one of those guys. And like Mark was saying, the question is now, he's not going to be a plus defender. He's not going to be anyone's top rebounder. Can he score at the next level? I see him as a third or fourth guy on a team, if that. And he's never going to. I don't think he translates to be a star. I think he's a nice player. And in Charlotte, it does seem like, I mean, Devin Booker, love him or hate him, he seems like a better fit there. Seemed like an absolutely better fit there with Kid Gilchrist on the wing and Batum on the wing. He just seemed like a better fit there. And with Zeller, Jefferson, and Hawes up front, I mean, what are you doing with your front line? You really don't have a plus defender up there right now. So except Biyombo, but I mean, I don't see the fit.
Fair enough. Well, let's move on to our next question then, which is another good one where the Kid Asthmatic asks, what NBA player would you compare Deangelo Russell to in terms of defensive ability? Who wants to grab this one?
Raw. I mean, defensive ability. I think the other day we were talking about a little bit of. Overall, we were talking about Brandon Roy and Manu Ginobili. A little bit of that. I saw some comps to Darren. Someone was talking about Darren Williams as well. I don't think Russell is that level as far as defense goes. Maybe he could be one day. Lateral foot speed isn't that quick, or as quick as it could be, but defensively it's tough to say because I think there is so much there. He was asked to do so much offensively at Ohio State this year that it's tough to say or pinpoint right now what his peak is defensively. And I mean someone else may have a better thought on that, but right now it's tough to say.
Looks like we no one else has a comparison, so well let's move on. That's okay. Let's move on to one more question from here on our list here. Do you have any ideas how to shorten the length of the draft? Jason wants to know. That's an interesting question. I certainly think that it goes on quite long. Any ideas out there?
I would not shorten it. I'd add about 7 rounds to it and make it take an entire weekend. It's brilliant. Shorten it. Ooh. Lengthen that thing. I'll take a week off work. We'll have a blast. I'll get the sausages in. It'll be brilliant. It's brilliant. It's great fun. I say that flippantly, but also seriously. It can be a bit arduous if you're not as geeky as I am. I understand that. Just turn it off when your team's picked.
Broadcast Wodge's Twitter feed instead of the NBA draft. Then it'd be over in like about half an hour.
That's a good idea. Seth?
I largely agree with Mark. I think I think the perceived length of the telecast might be perceived to how useful kind of the information presented is, and I'll leave that there. Splitting it up over make it 3 rounds, split it over 2 days. I think you get the first round or the lottery or something the first day, and then you come back to the second day and really kind of deep dive into some of these other kind of fringier prospects, give them their moment in the sun, kind of, because I mean most of the guys getting picked now in the second round are never going to be really meaningful NBA players, but still it's a nice chance to see where maybe the next Draymond Green, Marc Gasol, Monte Ellis, someone like that, the next find comes from. So maybe expand that a little bit for the super geeky types to really enjoy, and then the people who are most concerned with the star players. I mean, the star players are basically gone by the time we get to 10, 12. So have that the first night, and then the rest the second night. I think would be perfectly fine. Although, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it's entirely possible. I speak for myself, but I think I'm just watching it to see who's going to wear the sparkly, spiky shoes and bow ties, because that seems to me what a lot of this has to do with. We always cut back to that same shot of Joakim Noah dressed weird, or all those kind of suits. and you know, isn't that what we remember mostly from these things?
Well, you've had a good night then, because you've had all the sparkly shoes and bow ties one man can handle in an evening.
Absolutely.
Well, it's enough for me anyway.
Well, let's move on. We got a couple more picks we want to spotlight here in the top 10. The next one is with Denver, and they chose Emmanuel Mudiay, who no one has really seen play in America, obviously in China. And that gives me a lot of pause because I'm watching the highlights of him in the Chinese league. And I don't know, I kind of gave a big shrug because it didn't really give me a lot to go on with what I perceived as a talent level that wasn't, you know, indicative of obviously what he's going to go against in the NBA. And so what do you guys think? Is he for real?
He's gone against NBA caliber guards. I mean, the Chinese level is not high overall. At the same time, it is awash with NBA talent and fringe NBA talent, some of which are at the guard position. Mudiay's body of work is not what you would ideally choose someone on the basis of, because it has only been about 300 minutes. He played one season, he missed half of it, and then he had to jostle with Will Bynum, and that's not a great platform for anybody. But I do think he showed enough if you break down, and you shouldn't get into the habit of overanalyzing 300 minutes, but when you haven't got a choice, you kind of have to. When you break those down, you can see the scope for him to be a pretty phenomenal floor general, and he certainly has the size and the tools. At this point, if you point to the man and say that his biggest flaw is his jump shot, that's true of many young guards. I wouldn't worry about that so much. He's fallen sufficiently in the draft now. He could have gone as high as 3, we heard at one point this evening. He's fallen sufficiently far that I can't see him disappointing from here. And I guess the most synonymous situation was that of Brandon Jennings, who who played abroad instead of college. He played in Italy, not in China. It's a higher standard league in Italy, certainly, but then Jennings didn't do as well as Mudiay. Jennings has gone on to be fine, flawed but fine. You're picking 7th, flawed but fine is good. Mudiay could be good. I hope in a way they actually keep Ty Lawson for a while. Lawson, I'm sure, will be gone eventually, and based on what we've heard tonight, it'll be sooner rather than later. But running with Mudiay, push that ball, get Lawson's value up if nothing else, move him at the deadline, hand over to Mudiay. It's a good pick.
Yeah, by the way, the Denver thing seems like so up in the air right now. We wonder if Ty Lawson will even make it to training camp before they move him, and we don't even know exactly what value he has out there, really, even though he's a very high assist guy and can play and play well. We do have breaking news though with a trade, and you can't write this in Hollywood, but apparently John Lure of all people was just traded. Jeff, can you break it down for us then and let us know what the pieces were?
Of course he was.
Andrew Harrison is going to Memphis. John Lure is going to Phoenix, and clearly this will make or break the NBA next season.
Yes, absolutely. That was a big one. I'm not a big fan of the Harrison twins, either of them. Full disclosure, I did go to Wisconsin, so it gives me nightmares of the shot that whichever one of them made that 3 at the end of from 2 years ago. But you know, it's bizarre, right? How can you say that literally? Who would have thought John Lure would have even come up in our conversation tonight, and then within 2 minutes get traded?
Well, it's okay though, because you know, they've lost John Lure, but all they've got to do is tank next year, get a top 10 pick, and they can pick someone as good as John Lure, like Charlotte just did. So you know, they'll be fine.
Right.
Very replaceable man if you got a lottery pick.
By the way, I'm afraid to mention anybody else because you know they probably have kids that are in school and they don't want to have to move. I don't know. But let's move on to the next pick that we have after Emmanuel Mudiay, which is Stanley Johnson out of Arizona. Kind of a beast of a player down low for Arizona. He went to Detroit. Is that going to be a high volume minute player for Coach Stan Van Gundy?
There's not an awful lot of competition on the wings at the moment in his role, nonetheless. There's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, certainly, and he made some progress as a 3-and-D player. You could project Johnson if you're favourable to, and I'm stealing this example off of It might even have been you, Jeff, earlier on about how he projects a little bit as a Ron Artest type. And Ron Artest, back in his Houston, Sacramento, Chicago, Indiana days, was a brilliant defensive player and plenty capable offensively, albeit in a very ugly way. You can see some of that manifest through Johnson. It's not. I don't know if it's ideal pick for Stan Van Gundy and what they're doing there. Ultimately, that's their decision, and I feel that he can fit in, so that's fine. I found Johnson particularly hard to gauge. I would have gone for Winslow. I would have swapped them 8 and 10 as opposed to 10 and 8, whichever way around. It's fine though. If it is a reach, it's a slight one, and he has potential on both ends of the ball.
Absolutely, Jeff. What do you think? Does that sound right?
That Artest comp is great.
It was yours, I think. Thanks for
that. He's still developing his jump shot. Arizona asked him to do a little more shooting than he probably should have this year because their front line was so big with Brandon Ashley and Caleb Tarczewski up front, and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson obviously not knocking down any Jays anytime soon. So he's asked to play guard a lot more. I think at the 3 is his ideal spot. He's got no competition in Detroit right now. With basically, I think Tayshaun is still on the roster, and I think they may have Quincy Miller. But Caldwell Pope's going to play the 2, maybe play the 3 in some scenarios where they go, Reggie Jackson and another guard, Caldwell Pope. Johnson can get some minutes at the 4 sporadically, but I really like him as a 3. But like Mark said, that's the thing that raised my eyebrows the most was this is not a Van Gundy type wing. I mean, he has guys that every wing can shoot. Typically, every wing can shoot, and that's going to be the biggest question mark about Stanley Johnson can he continue to refine his jump shot, and we'll find out.
Absolutely. Well, let's go to a couple more questions then, shall we? And we have a couple good ones in queue here. If I can get my screen share to pop up here. So here we go. So the first question we have here next is from Trent. Asks, how is it that the Spurs get so much out of international players while many lottery picks of international players are busts from other teams? Who wants to weigh in on this question?
Part of it is where they're picking. The expectations are lower, and if they pick a guy who ends up never coming over, well, okay, we picked him at the 28th spot, and he never came over, no big deal. So they're kind of able to even get a couple more years to, I think they drafted Thiago Splitter in 2007. Is that have that? And he didn't come over until for 2 or 3 more years, or maybe even drafted him earlier than that. But that's sort of indicative.
2007 from memory, yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of indicative of all right, let's watch him as he grows a little bit, bring him over when he's a more mature player, and then we don't have to when he's on his rookie contract with us, he's really more of a third-year player, and that's kind of lets them take advantage of kind of the system with international players and the rookie scale.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on. Let's grab another question while we're here. Here, Todd asks, any way for the Sixers to recover from this disaster at this point? Too late to get value from one of their bigs. I don't know. Are we calling this a disaster?
It's not a disaster. It's very awkward, but then so's everything in the Hinkie era been. How do you not pick Jahlil Okafor right there? Who do you take? Mudiay? Why? You need a point guard. Doesn't mean you got to take one when there's one there. Okafor was the 2nd or 3rd best player in this draft, and with all due respect to Porzingis and whoever else, and even my very close personal friend Willie Cauley-Stein, there's a gap. Okafor is in a different tier to those beneath him, in my opinion, and as a result, they have to take him when he's there. And how that works out long term, absolutely no idea, and I really wouldn't worry about it. Because right now you have no idea what you've got from Embiid, and you don't really know if he can pair Okafor and Noel. Doesn't matter. Pick them. Especially because the team has had a lot of trouble scoring, and they just drafted a guy whose post-offensive skills are reminiscent of Tim Duncan. You definitely take that. The lack of guard play, the bad spacing, sort it out later. It's fine. This is still a rebuilding project, as is painfully obvious. they're swinging for the fences, and this is a step towards that, even if it's not the ideal step they wanted to take. It wasn't Russell or bust. It really wasn't.
I'm with Mark on that. I think you've got to look at it as best case and worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, Embiid's foot is a total bust. He's never going to play again. In which case, you need to fill that void anyway. Now you just have Noel and Okafor is your front court of the future. Best case scenario, Embiid is not done, and he does turn out to be a franchise level player. In which case, now you have either Noel or Okafor that are these incredible assets that you can trade and get more value for than Mudiay. So either way, you win. It's just not the traditional way of building teams where you just go for the position you need. I think when you're as bad as Philadelphia is, you take the best player available and then you get that value and then you trade for what you need based on that. You have to look at it like an investment more than anything else.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? Let's top this off. I got one good question here at the end here I think we could wrap up on, which is Matthew asks, with the pick of Bobby Portis on the Bulls, do you expect any Bulls big men to be traded? Who and why? We do have a Bulls insider, I believe, with Kelly Scaletta with us. So do you want to take that first, Kelly?
I think that a big was going regardless. I think it probably will be Taj. I'm hoping it will be Powell. I don't see Powell fitting in as well with Hoyball. But and he's got a high trade value right now, just coming off of the second-team All-NBA selection. But and Taj's trade value is probably a little low with his surgery, but because sometimes the Bulls like to do stupid things, they'll probably do something stupid and keep Powell and trade Taj. But I don't. They've got so many good men now. I don't see how you keep them all around. Somebody's got to be traded.
Somebody does. I get why you say it should be Powell, but it must be considered that the prize possession was Joakim Noah, and in theory he could be again. But things have to be different. He has to play a lot less. He has to spend a lot of time healing these knees and ankles and feet and anything else that's ailing him in order to be able to sustain anything like the production that he's had over the last few years, last year accepted. So you can't go decimating the front court to get rid of everybody or a lot of people, especially for players like Bobby Portis, because then you're exposing Noah. He has to be protected. I think they can spare one. I think logically it should be Taj because Gasol can tandem with Noah at centre and then Mirotic, Portis and a bit of small ball, bit of McDermott, bit of really small ball, Jimmy Butler, bit of big ball, could have phrased that better, bit of Pau Gasol, that sort of thing. You can't clear out everybody and expose Noah. He's been overexposed, and that's where the problem goes. Although I would have to say to you, Kelly, that be prepared that if someone's going to go, it might be Cam Bairstow.
I'd be looking, I'd be quietly looking around to see what Noah would get. I mean, I know it's kind of it's sacrilege almost, but his trade value is not it's not probably not high right now, but it's unlikely to go up as he ages more. And I would, as he kind of starts to break down, I would worry that you're depending so much on a guy whose body isn't going to hold up for especially the important part of the season. It's 2 years in a row where he had not so much left by the playoffs, and part of that was maybe the minute distribution during the season probably didn't help. Part of it is his style of play and just getting older. So I would kick the tires on that. You don't have to if the right deal isn't there, you don't have to, but it's something that it's at least worth investigating because, I'd rather trade him a year too early than a year too late.
Yep.
Seth, I'd love to agree with you, but I just think it's too late for that. Like you said, there's 2 years now where he has run out, and he declined noticeably last year in such a way that you have to worry that it's ever going to come back. And he's just on the other side of 30, and his contract's expiring. Trading now would be trading low. and it might be higher than it will be in the future, but not by much. My great regret was that I never campaigned for them to trade him as of last summer, unpopular as it would have been on the back of his DPOY. We can say now, with the benefit of hindsight, that it was very much the way to go. And it was predictable at the time, because Noah has always battled things. The way he runs at his size, especially with all the muscle he's put on, he's a lot bigger than he was when he came to the league. And the way he runs, it was always going to break down. And now it looks like that he has. I don't know if it's really doable to trade him. I think you get more value elsewhere, and as a result, that's what they should do.
Yeah, and I have to jump in here and say that the answer is Powell needs to be traded. And I think anytime you bring a player in who then forces your defensive player of the year to play a position that he didn't win that award with is a problem. And while he does give them a lot of stuff on the offensive side, I know that Tibbs lost more hair this past year, watching Powell get beat across the top and play and not box out well to the point where I'm sure he just felt like he needed to play him because he was the marquee free agent they brought in, and I suspect that had to be an issue when he was as a defensive coach. So listen, everybody, this was a fantastic NBA draft show. We covered a lot of things, a lot of different conversations about players across the draft and across the NBA, John Lewis included. So thank you guys all for coming in. I don't want to mention anybody else for fear of another trade, but sports fans, don't forget at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You win. You guys, can we all do this in a chorus? Hey, are you guys in?
We're in.
I'm in.
We're in.
All right. Check you later.